Okay, so it is time to finally talk about Assassin's Apprentice on my channel. So this is book one of the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb and book one of the Realm of the Elderlings series, which I believe is up to 16 books currently. Quick backstory, this is the first book that I actually read just over a year ago when I came back to reading, and I've told the story a million times where my expectations did not meet the reality of what this book was. I didn't like it all that much. I thought the prose didn't really stick with me. I didn't like the story of the character of Fitz. I was expecting more action, all that good stuff. I'm happy to say, though, that when I reread it recently with my beautiful illustrated editions, it was awesome. So let's talk about a little bit about what this book is and why I liked it so much this time around. Basically, you're introduced to an older version of Fitz, and he starts to retell his story from the age of 6 to about 13 or so by the end of book one. He's clearly early teens by the end of the book, but you're introduced to him as a 6-year-old, and he is the bastard son of Chivalry, who is royalty and the king in waiting, essentially, in this duchy that they live in. He's dropped off as a child to our main man and father figure of the book, Burrick. And Burrick is just the greatest guy, basically, in this world, that he respected the hell out of Chivalry. He sort of accepts the burden of becoming Fitz's caretaker and sort of father in this world, and it's really tough on Burrick because, one, he knows what's at stake for a bastard son of a royal to be seen as sort of this outcast and not accepted by society. He might even be in danger of his life, and Burrick sort of takes that on. And to add to that, Fitz has one side of the magic in this world known as the wit. The magic in the world is separated between wit and skill, and there's not a whole lot of depth to it in this book, but basically wit is you can sort of telepathically communicate with animals and sort of mind meld with them. And the reason that scares Burrick is he doesn't want Fitz to sort of fall too far into that and almost forget that he's human and sort of become an animal in a sense. So he kind of keeps Fitz away from doing that, but that's unfortunately some of the only solace that Fitz finds in this world as a character, because he is treated like dog shit for pretty much the entire book. I'll talk about some of the other characters in this book in just a minute, but Fitz is sort of a tragic character. Some of it he may possibly be elaborating a little bit or embellishing some of his story because he is retelling it to us. So he's sort of an unreliable narrator, whether it be through a traumatic experience or misremembering or what have you. I don't know how old Fitz is when he's sort of telling this story to us or where he's at in life. So you do have a bit of that of maybe some things don't unfold the way that he says that they do, but his life is pretty awful. He gets treated like crap. The wit is sort of shunned and looked down upon because people don't think that that's something that you're meant to be doing. And the other half of that is the skill, which is basically restricted to only being trained in if you're royalty, which Fitz is. He's a bastard son of a royal, so he does eventually start to train in the skill, but because he's a bastard, he gets treated like crap. So even though he is technically a royal part of this family, he's treated like crap by a couple of bastards that we meet in this book. So Regal, first of all, is one of his uncles. He is a terrible human being, somewhat mustache twirly at times, as some of these villains are in this series, or this book, sorry. But he just kind of looks down on Fitz. He doesn't think he's worth his time. He hates that he's even sort of blood related to him at all. On the opposite end of that, though, you have Verity, who is relatively nice to Fitz and sort of treats him like a human being and doesn't just shun him away like most of society seems to. We're also introduced to King Shrewd, who's kind of not in a great spot because he's using a ton of the skill all the time and it's actually draining him a bit, sort of like out of the picture for the most part. So early on, what we get into with Fitz is he's living with Burrick sort of outside of the castle. He's working with the stables, he's working with a lot of animals, and early on you see this tension building up between him and Burrick because of the wit that he has. And there's this heartbreaking moment that happens super early on, and it's so messed up. And this was one of the first times in this book that I was just like, God, Robin Hobb, you're so mean to this character. And then she does it a few more times throughout this book. So Fitz is experiencing a lot of loss and trauma in this book. I'll just put it that way. But the story kind of takes off with him being approached by Chade, who is the royal assassin to King Shrewd, and they are telling him that he is to train as his assassin's apprentice and learn the ways of the assassin, poisoning, learning how to blend in with people, with crowds, kind of fit into society, lurk in the shadows, and also kill people. And Chade tells Fitz early on, like, I'm going to train you in this, but it's up to you to decide, when you get to that point of whether or not you have what it takes to sort of be an assassin and to kill people. So that's sort of like his main training aspect of this book, is he's training to be an assassin, which is why my brain, when I first started reading this book, I was like, cool, he's going to be killing people and he's going to be doing all this action. And it's just not that kind of story. It's a much slower burn where he's training, and it's actually really interesting. He's training how to mix different herbs and create poisons, some of which might put somebody to sleep, some of which might kill somebody, whether it be instantly or days later. He's learning all these things and slowly builds up to actually performing assassin. So that whole buildup of his character and his training is really, really cool. And Chade being the sort of Obi-Wan figure, the wise wizard figure. Obviously, he's not a wizard, but you get what I'm saying. He's sort of that mentor in Fitz's life and sort of training him to be what he's going to be for the rest of the series. And while he's doing that, he's also approached by Galen, huge garbage human, who is to train him in the skill because he is of royal blood and he's meant to train with that as well. Of course, this is sort of a setup for Fitz because they want him to fail. They treat him like garbage. Galen drives him to the point of near suicide at one point. Galen's garbage, and he treats Fitz like absolute dog shit. And so you have this internal struggle of Fitz, and the reason that the first person perspective works really well in this book is you're in his head a lot. So this is very much a character study, and you're dealing with Fitz's emotions and trauma and turmoil and just all of the struggles that he goes through in this book, whether it be from just trying to be a kid because he's thrust into all these different, he's thrust into being an assassin. He's thrust into training in the skill with a terrible instructor who hates him. He's not treated well, and he's just trying to figure out how to be a kid, and he gets a bit of that escape, whether it be with the animals or with Molly and the other kids that he meets sort of in town. But he has a rough life, and he doesn't really get a chance to just grow up like he should. So you have this entire plot of Fitz sort of growing up and going through this training in the skill and as an assassin, while all this political maneuvering and stuff is happening in the background that he's not necessarily privy to because, yes, he's an assassin, but he's sent sort of on missions throughout the book that you don't really get to see all the political maneuvering and the scheming and all the background politics because it's not the focus. It's happening, and I feel like he's going to get more involved in that. But because of his character and the sort of the role that he plays, he's not privy to all of this. Sort of parallel to the story, you also have this ever-linging dread and, I guess, bad guys sort of looming over the entire Six Duchies, and that is the Red Ship Raiders, who you learn about them pretty early on that they're attacking villages off the coast. They're raiding and they're looting and they're killing people, but they don't seem to be taking much. It's weird. They're sort of just leaving these villages destroyed, and they're taking captives. And you learn this really sort of ominous thing where they're saying, okay, we're going to ransom these people, and if you give us our ransom, we will kill them rather than return them. And you learn this whole thing about how they're forging people, as it's called, and they're essentially stripping people of their humanity and returning them as savages. They're just sort of like mindless people at that point. So you have, this is just ravaging the duchies throughout this book. So you have this entire sort of side plot happening where you have this, not necessarily a war going on, but sort of this like everlasting conflict throughout the books as well. So I'm really interested to see where that goes after this book, and if that plays a much bigger part in the following trilogies or not, because I don't know how connected this all is, but that would be really interesting to see beyond book one, how that plays a role into what's to come. I mean, at its core though, this is really just a character study of Fitz. He is a bastard child in this world that he doesn't know a lot, or know a lot of people, doesn't know how to find his way through it. He has a couple of mentor figures that do have his back. We are introduced to the Fool, who is an incredibly interesting character. He's not in it a lot, but when he does show up, he's sort of there to help Fitz, whether it be through riddles or directly. He's always sort of there. And it's one of those things of like, okay, there's definitely more to this character than we're being told, because he kind of just like shows up at the right time to either help Fitz or give him advice, things like that. It's almost, he kind of reminded me, I said it in Discord, I was like, did J.K. Rowling just like create Dobby because she read the Farseer trilogy and she liked the wit, or she liked the fool, so she created Dobby, because Dobby just like starts appearing to Harry and telling him like, don't go back to Hogwarts, like they're out to get you, I need to keep you safe. And then also Brandon Sanderson just straight up created Hoyd because of the fool. So I mean, I feel like Robin Hobb has a lot of influence on the fantasy genre in general, and I'm excited to continue, because the way that this is written, her prose really just paints a picture well. It's sort of a classical, old school style writing, I guess, for fantasy. This is very different than something like a Brandon Sanderson, for example, where it's very approachable and straight to the point at times, and lots of action, and just the writing styles between older fantasy and newer fantasy. Like there's a clear, stark difference. Like you're not going to read a Robin Hobb and compare it to even a Joe Abercrombie or an R.F. Kuang. Like the writing styles are just vastly different. But Robin Hobb's writing is beautiful, and this is just from Assassin's Apprentice. I'm fully expecting that it's going to get way better, and I'm going to appreciate it even more. And that's why I loved it so much this time around, because I've read so much more since last year that I have that appreciation that, the 10 plus years that I didn't read for just didn't have me prepared for the style of writing that she has. But it's a slow pace, slow burn, but it's so good. It's well written. The characters, for the most part, are well done. Some of the villains are a little bit too mustache twirly, but that's my only real critique. And it's not even a huge critique. There's obviously not a ton of action in this, but when there is sort of action scenes that happen, they're really well done. And you have this sense of despair through a lot of this book, which she just encapsulates beautifully in this story, whether it be Fitz interacting with a group of forged people, or his training with Chade and the skill, or even some of his special intimate moments that he has with animals because he can use the wit. Just everything about his character I think is really well done, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. I've been told that Royal Assassin is fantastic and just kind of knocks everything out of the park, and I already enjoyed Assassin's Apprentice a lot, so I'm fully expecting to love Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. I am definitely going to continue reading the Farseer trilogy, and probably beyond. I don't know when I'm going to read the entirety of Realm of the Elderlings, probably not until next year, but I'm really looking forward to more Robin Hobb. This was a refreshing reread for me, and I don't normally reread books, guys. I just decided to, because I had that itching feeling in the back of my mind of like, I really should give this another shot. I didn't think I was fair to it the first time, and I'm more well-read now, so I absolutely loved it this time around. It's a great book, and I'm looking forward to continuing with the series. I'm not going to get into any spoilers in this review, but towards the end, the finale was even better than I remembered it. It was actually fun rereading this, because there were certain moments, like as they were coming, little bits of that memory were coming back to like, oh, this is what's about to happen, whether it be good or bad, because there's some moments that Robin Hobb is just a mean person, but everything in this book was pretty well done. The finale, like I said, was excellent. The entire plot that happens in the last sort of quarter of this book was, I loved it. So really looking forward to what happens next, and stay tuned next month when I read Royal Assassin. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Definitely looking forward to more Hobb, but like and subscribe. As always, do hit up Patreon if you want to support the channel financially. That's always optional, but always greatly appreciated. Definitely jump in Discord, though, or let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Assassin's Apprentice, what your favorite Robin Hobb book is in Realm of the Elderlings. Did you love this one? Did you hate it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So until next time, keep reading.